Hello, welcome to another episode of Confessions of a Dog Trainer. I'm so happy you're here. My name is Bethany. My company is called Walking Dog Training. Uh, I'm saying this in case you're new here. If you are, welcome. What I would recommend is I think you can see it. I went back the other day and did this because I always get the prompt of which season is this of the podcast. And so I kind of think of this new, I don't know how to say it. After my dad passed away, getting back into podcasting, I think of it as my second season because I did do this podcast a while back. I would sit in my car back when I could do this on my phone, and I would just record with my phone in the car. Just little stories and things that I was thinking of. And then I stopped for a while and so got back into it. And yeah, you can go back to Season 2, Episode 1, if you want to start from the beginning. I cannot believe how many episodes we've done. It's been so fun. This episode is going to be a kind of a catch up on the dog I previously worked with who went home yesterday, Noelle. So, talking through her reactivity stuff, that was her biggest issue we were working through. With reactivity comes some other things that kind of show up along the way. So I want to talk through that, exactly what I did with her that made a huge difference using the e-collar. I love talking about e-collar stuff with you because I think it's something that a lot of trainers don't talk about enough. I think there are so many of you out there who are really struggling with your dogs, and there is an answer. And I do not think that trainers are rocket scientists. I think experience definitely helps. It helps me feel more confident using the e-collar in certain situations. And so I'm hoping that by sharing my experience working with different dogs and how I use the e-collar, levels, all the things, very transparent, that it can give you the confidence to maybe dial up from 20 to 25 or something. I don't know. So, but yeah, I think there's so much you can do. I was just talking with an owner who signed up for the board and train, which is really exciting. And she has a home in Naples. And she was talking about her dog and how she's using 2 leashes. The dog is on a harness and she just can't enjoy the walk and just sounded really defeated. And I was just getting so excited to work with her and her dog. This was before we really decided, yes, I think the board and train would be a great option for you because I don't know if this surprises some people, but I don't try and talk people into the board and train. I actually try to talk them into virtual stuff, my guides, and then doing virtual one-on-one sessions with me. Just because the board and train, and maybe this is just some good insight for anyone who's interested in a board and train or a new trainer or someone who just likes to hear someone else's process. I've learned that it is so much about the owner. So if I get a vibe from an owner and I'm like, oh, I just don't think this would be a good fit. I actually told someone a few weeks ago, it was a friend of an owner I worked with, and there were some things she was saying, like she doesn't want to crate her dog. Her husband's not really on board. These now to me are like little red flags because one, not everyone has to crate their dog, but that is something I like owners to start prior to the board and train because crating is a big part of what I do. It's, oops, okay, I don't know. Let me put my phone on silent. I'm not sure if you could hear that ding. So it's just a part of my routine. Like right now, I'm working with a dog, Valentina, a little Frenchie. She's so cute. And if you don't know, I share a lot over on Instagram. So you can go and look at my stories. I save them to highlights. So you can go back and watch those and hopefully it's helpful. She's in her kennel right now sleeping. So, and she's had some FOMO, anxious stuff that we've been working through a bit because I think she's used to being around her owners all the time. But kenneling is a big part of my program just because I have 4 dogs. It keeps everyone safe. Also, crate time is so helpful for helping your dog learn how to do nothing. It's very similar to place, the place command, which is, if you don't know about that, I'll, in the show notes, as always, I think I put one of our freebies. It's a free guide on how to get started with the place command. So there's more info in that guide, all about the command. I love it so much. But the kennel is like the place command with borders, so the kennel is contained. And it's just a great way. The more that you can nurture your dog's calmer mindset, oh my God, it's the most life-changing thing ever. And it's the one thing I think most people never hear about when they get a dog until they get a dog who's reactive or anxious, and then you come across a trainer like me telling you, teach your dog to do nothing. But it was interesting yesterday at Noelle's go home session. I will get back to talking about Noelle, and I want to talk to you about Valentina and the levels I use with her because she's a smaller dog. Maybe this will be interesting. It's just, I think it's interesting because levels can really vary from dog to dog and their intensity when addressing reactivity with this exercise that I now do primarily with reactive dogs that I work with. But at Noelle's go home session yesterday, we were outside of the dog park and she was about to go and she was telling me that she's been telling whoever wants to listen about the place command and how she finally it clicked for her. And she, it was so funny to me because she was saying things that I say all the time that was just like, she mentioned strengthening Jax's calm muscle. And I was like, oh my God, okay, I feel like I'm looking in the mirror. And that's not very, I don't usually hear owners regurgitate stuff back to me that I say so often. So I thought that was really funny. And she was just talking about it like, it's like meditating for dogs. And I've said this before. And so made me realize, okay, Jess, you're listening. I love that. And she was saying how it's like when she was, I think, going for to get her yoga teacher certification, and she had such a hard time with the meditation part. So, and she was saying, but then the more that you do it, it's just like building up your tolerance to it. And very similar with the place command with dogs. And so, I just thought that was interesting. I have no idea where I was going. Okay, so let's go back to, well, first, as always, I like to do my little hello to my dad to continue. I don't know how else to say it. It sounds so cheesy to say it this way, but continue his legacy. Like, I think I am his legacy, continuing his energy. And he was just such an amazing person. And someone sent me a really sweet message today saying she was listening to the podcast and she was walking on the treadmill and almost in tears because she lost her dad back in 2022. And this has been something that's kind of not a byproduct of doing the podcast, but we're more than dog owners and dog trainers, and we have lives and we have other things that I think are so important to talk about because dog training is so much about us as a person. And when you are working with either your dog who's super challenging and you're feeling overwhelmed and frustrated and you dive into e-collar training, or you want to work through stuff, it like peels back a lot of layers that maybe you haven't even realized were laying that were like underneath all of, we put up these walls, and a lot of times I don't think we want to work through things that are inside of us, the insecurities and the shame about things. Like having a reactive dog makes you feel ashamed a lot of times. And I think that's a very it's a common thing to feel. And I think that's why it's so important to talk about it so that you feel like you're not the only one going through this. So when you lose someone you love so much, I've never experienced anything like that. And so talking through that experience and sharing it with you on here, I've gotten a lot of messages from people saying that they relate to it and thank you. And I've been through something similar. And the person who messaged me said that she also has a symbol for her dad, which is an eagle or a blue jay, I think. And it was just like, oh my God, that's so, it's just so nice knowing you're not the only one that thinks of these things. And yeah, she said, I think our dads are really proud of us. And I agree. So my dad would just love so much that I'm doing this again and talking to you. And yeah, he'd love it. So I've got my cup of Joe. I'll wait for you to get yours. Okay. Let's dive in. So, and then I have a really good question from someone who asked me over on Instagram. Sometimes I'll ask, hey, do you have any questions that you want me to talk through on the podcast? This is a really good, longer question. So I'm primarily just going to dive into that one after I talk through Noelle and Valentina. Okay, so let's get into it. First with Noelle. So when it comes to Noelle, and you can go back and watch her highlight on Instagram, she's an Australian Shepherd who I think is part Border Collie. Excuse me. She was so drivey. She would do these things where I could literally picture her herding sheep. Like she'd get down really low and then she'd move. And it's like, she was like tracking things. It was just so interesting to me. And then I worked with her brother, Jax. I have a couple of episodes about him and his reactivity, and he was just a very diverse kind of a case. There were so many different things and they all connected, and he was a really cool dog to work with, but both very drivey, working breeds. So these are dogs like shepherds, collies. Um, like we have a dog who's like that, our German Shepherd Louis, just very drivey and on. So with Noelle, something that helped so much was addressing her reactivity head on. So I've talked about this a lot. I really like to talk about reactivity in the e-collar because so many of you struggle with this. It's like the most common thing I find owners struggle with. Most dogs I work with through the board and train are highly reactive. If I get a dog who's not reactive, it's bizarre. So with Noelle, it was the first week. It was probably day 3 or 4. So I like to address the reactivity pretty soon after I get a dog in. I like to introduce the e-collar. I like to work on recall in the backyard to get them into our routine of going from the backyard into the kennel room. I like to get away from using a leash as soon as possible. And I found that working on that first and prioritizing it really helps me when I'm on a walk with the dog because the same principles apply. So with recall, I like to pair tone on the e-collar with the stem. So if you're not familiar with this, take a look at our e-collar starter cheat sheet freebie. It will be linked in the show notes as well. It's a completely free guide. It goes over how I get started, what all of these things mean that I'm saying, so that you can put the pieces together. But I pair tone plus stem in the backyard, and then I do the same thing on the walk. So tone, think of it, it's a sound on the e-collar. You change the vibrate button to tone. So when you press on it, beep, your dog hears a sound. You can pair that with the stem, which is the levels 1 through 100. I use a mini educator e-collar. Those are just my preferred ones because they have the tone function, which I love. So on the walk, so tone encourages movement. Think of it as the green light. It's like, let's go, come with me, get onto place, movement. Where the stem, which 1 through 100, one of those levels, short for stimulation because it's a muscle stimulator. So I like to say stim. That's like the red light. That's like, stop what you're doing. Here's a boundary. Pay attention to me, or to disagree with something. This is how you make recall non-negotiable. Different commands like the down command, walking next to you, non-negotiable. So there's no more nagging. There's no more, luring with treats, or your dog only listens to you with food. That all goes away. So with Noelle, something that was super helpful was I was walking and I saw a woman who had 3 corgis and they were just out of control. Usually when I am working through reactivity with a dog, I try to find dogs who are more reactive. I also don't want to stress an owner out who has reactive dogs because I know all of us can relate. It's like when you have your dogs and they're kind of losing it, the last thing you want is for someone to walk past you. But I've seen this lady enough times where I know she walks past dogs all the time. It's just part of her life with 3 out of control corgis, but it's a perfect training opportunity for me to walk by with Noelle. So what I do is I let Noelle get out of the heel position. She'll like lunge. This is usually what most dogs do. They'll lunge and bark. They get really loud. And that's when I use the e-collar. And with her, it was leveled 95 out of 100. So what I did with her was I pressed and held for a second so that the act of reacting was super uncomfortable. Now, for you working with your dogs, and I'm going to talk about, actually, I'll wait to talk about this when I answer the question that an owner asked me, because I think it has to do with this. So for me, I know based on her reactivity, her size, her intensity, that a higher level is necessary. Could I have gone to like 50? Yes. But I know with a dog like her, again, based on my experience, I don't want to nag her. I don't want to have to do this 10 times. And that was the only time I had to do it with her. There were other times where I had to use the e-collar. I like to think of it more as like an interruption, an interrupter. So like if she would get like, it's like a giraffe neck. So if your dog is laying down and they see a dog and they like go like this. Oh, if you're not watching on the camera, I'm lengthening my neck and it's like, getting really excited about seeing a dog. I would use the e-collar to interrupt that excitement. So I'm not necessarily correcting for anything. It's more a way to be like, hey, enough. And once your dog understands what the e-collar pressure means, you can use it for so many things. And I see it all the time where for something like a dog who is laying down, but I'll tap on the e-collar. I'll tap on the e-collar at like a lower-ish level. So when I say lower-ish level, it's usually a little bit higher than the working level. The working level is the first level that your dog feels on the e-collar, which is usually lower, usually below 10. So like with Noelle, let's say if her working level is about a 6, maybe it would be a level 12, where if to interrupt like just the excitement, because I want to address it before, I want to be clear with her about, hey, relax. So a tap tap at level 12, and she would lay her head down sometimes all the way on the ground. I didn't teach her to do that, but she knows what this pressure means. When she feels the e-collar, it's stop doing something, relax, lay down, because a lot of times I'll pair a tap tap on the e-collar with a dog laying down in the kennel. I love doing that for dogs who have anxious stuff, where they're standing up. I've been doing this with Valentina because she has some serious FOMO. So it's like some barking and whining, but she'll be standing up. So she came to, okay, I'm jumping from dog to dog, but Valentina, the little Frenchie, she went through a board and train up north. The owners moved down south here in Florida. They are pet sitters, dog walkers. They have their own business. So they wanted to start something else here. And I think for family purposes, they had a good experience with their board and train, but they need more help. So I'm kind of doing it's the accountability phase of e-collar training. So lots of exposure, stuff like that. But with her, what I'm seeing is there is some other things that I want to work through, like her like anxious stuff in the kennel, which maybe she doesn't do that with her owners, but still, if I help her understand that calm in the kennel is important, and if I'm using the e-collar as a way to pair with down. So when I tap tap on the e-collar and I'm in here and she's in the kennel room, she's been laying down, which is great. I didn't teach her to do that. It's just she knows when I feel the e-collar, I should stop doing something. I should pay attention. So when they're in the kennel, usually they just lay down. And it's some dogs are much more challenging than that, but that's what I've been doing with her. So again, okay, so with Noelle, walked past the corgis. They were barking, not like too out of control, but enough. I walked past, corrected for that moment, kept walking. And then it was helping her understand that I want her to walk next to me. So the thing after a correction like that is, and yes, there was a vocalization. Sometimes I get this question, usually in like one-on-one sessions. So I do offer virtual coaching sessions, 30 minutes, $65. I kind of keep it at that price. I'm sure I could go higher. I think a lot of trainers charge more. I don't know why I'm saying this, but I want it to be accessible. I think that there's just sometimes where you need reassurance. And so in a virtual call recently, and she was working through some reactive stuff and she needs to dial up on the e-collar. And she was like, do you like, usually when you do this, do dogs like vocalize or yip? And I said, yes. So especially when I'm using a meaningful level like that with Noelle, she did vocalize. So there was a sound that she made. It is not my favorite sound to hear, but I'm not ever going to share that on Instagram because there's too many people who will take that snippet and be like, see, e-collar training is the worst. That's why I'd prefer to just share it here with you. Let you know the realities of e-collar training and addressing reactivity. It can be life-changing, but it can feel scary at times if you don't hear something like this, or if you don't know that that's part of the process. Okay, that was uncomfortable, but let's move through it. I heard Bethany talk about this. Okay, I don't love this, but okay, I know that it's not something that I'm doing and no one else is doing. So that's definitely a part of it. But to me, I would prefer to have a moment of discomfort than a lifetime of an owner not being able to do things with their dog. So after that moment, then it's more, because it can feel like, not like you correct for the reactivity and a dog is like, oh, cool, I'm not ever going to react again. No, this is a process for sure. So, but then it's after you correct for something like that, for the big outburst with a more meaningful level, now it's show the dog what you want them to do instead. And that's where really the power comes from a situation like that. Because if you are correcting for stuff and your dog has no idea what they should be doing, that's where you run into trouble because it's confusing. So giving some clarity with leash guidance, having your dog walk next to you. This is why working on recall stuff in the backyard, introducing tone in the backyard, the sound, it makes it so much easier to get a dog to walk nicely with you after a correction like that when you're out on a walk. So that was something that was so helpful with Noelle. Oh my gosh, let me take a sip. My voice gets so dry when I'm talking so much. Okay, so that made a huge difference with Noelle. And then it was more like just addressing more minimal stuff. So this is something I think a lot of you are missing, where you're maybe using the e-collar to correct things before a big outburst. Sometimes that can work. Sometimes it just makes a dog seem like they get more reactive because it's more irritating and you're probably nagging with the level that you're using on the e-collar. There's 100 levels. I told you the level I used with Noelle for that moment because I want you to understand that levels matter. But again, you could always just go 10 above the level you used last time. It doesn't have to be 95 or 100, but I want you to know that's the level I used with her, and it was super helpful. So with Noelle over the next weeks, it was really just exposure plus a job over time, I think creates a more confident and stable dog. So that's what it is after correcting a big moment like that. Now it's okay, let's practice what I want you to do more of consistently every single day. And it's something that could just be like a new routine, could be place time after the walk. Because I know so many of you have different schedules. Noelle and Jax's owner has a much different schedule than me. So she only has little pockets of time when she can do certain things with the dogs. That's okay. My job is to take dogs on outings and do things like that. But for you, it could be being really consistent with place time after a walk in the morning and a walk when you get home from work, followed by place time while you eat your dinner. That is enough. But being consistent with at least 1 to 2 routines is really helpful. Valentina, the dog I have in now, so she exercised. I did a very similar exercise with her because on drop-off day, my husband brought out our German Shepherd when Valentina was dropped off and her owners were here because I wanted to see, since they've been through a program and they're still struggling with reactivity, I have a feeling Valentina acts differently with them. So I wanted them to walk with her past Bobby and Louie, and she did react. It's much more, it's still a reaction, but it's a small dog. It's like a little potato dog, like throwing out a bark. And so, not that I mean to like laugh at, she's so cute. If you've seen her on Instagram, I'm taking pictures and sharing, and she's so cute with her little pouty face. So with her, either the next day or 2 days after, I had Bobby come out with our dog Theo. It doesn't really matter what dog, but walked past, had Valentina like loosely on the walk on the leash, not like tight next to me and heel or anything like that. I wanted her to make the mistake so I could add clarity and then show her what I want her to do instead. So with her, my level was 45. So the reason for the moment where she reacted, I tap. I didn't press and hold. It was a tap at 45. Just because she's smaller, I felt like that would get across the message like, hey, don't do that. Now, here's what I want you to do instead. So using tone to encourage her to move with me. And then, so after that moment, walking around my dog Theo to see how she'd do, I would follow through again with that level if I needed to, or probably maybe like 50. I usually dial up if I have to do it again, so I don't end up nagging the dog. But that level meant something to her. How do you know if the level that you're using means something to your dog? The behavior that you corrected for is highly minimized. If you find that you use the e-collar and your dog continues to react or even gets more worked up, it's a huge indication that you are underwhelming your dog with the e-collar level. So many of you think high on the level on the e-collar is 35. That's like such a common level I hear. There's 100 levels. And if your dog is showing you over and over again, I don't care about 35. Like I know you think that's high, but to me, it's just more irritating than anything. It's time to dial up. And just start with 5 to 10 above the level you used before. You don't have to bump up so high like I'm telling you or like I'm doing, but I hope it encourages you and reminds you and reassures you that dialing up is the missing link for all owners who use the e-collar when it comes to reactivity. There's like this big misconception. This is the thing I think I mentioned before, where when I first started sharing about the e-collar and reactivity and wrote our guide. So I have an e-collar starter guide, which includes a whole video library where you can hear when I'm using the e-collar. It did not have all of that in the beginning when I first wrote it. And then the reactive dog handbook. I got so much pushback from other trainers who were saying, you shouldn't encourage owners to use this. They're going to use it wrong. And I just don't think that's true. I do think that some owners could use help from a trainer. I do think some owners have more intense dogs. There are owners I work with all the time through the board and train who I think they would have a really hard time doing this on their own. But I think so many of you can do this on your own. You can at least start, you can try. And I think some trainers were like, oh, an owner is going to like go up too high. What I find is that all the owners who are listening to the kind of owner who's going to listen to this podcast, who's going to follow on Instagram, who is doing their work and trying to figure out, how can I get more help with my dog? I am struggling. I have hit a wall. I've tried all the food. I've tried all the rewarding, and I'm still struggling. Like I need help. You are not the person who's going to dial up to 100 and just tap. It just doesn't happen. 9 times out of 10, like 99% of the time, owners are underwhelming their dogs. In the last 7 years, one owner, and it was a guy owner, not that it's just guys doing this, but who was too heavy handed with like the prong collar. And I had to tell him, like, whoa, okay, let's just ease up a little bit. You don't have to be so like, so poppy with I don't know, it was an odd moment. But one time in the last 7 years working with an owner, anytime I talk with an owner through our virtual coaching sessions or someone who's used the e-collar starter guide or or we have a bundle. If you're struggling with reactivity, I highly encourage you to get our reactive dog bundle, which includes both our guides, and you get it at a discount, which who doesn't love a discount? But I never hear someone say that they went up to 100 and like, uh, my dog is nervous now. What do I do? It just doesn't happen. Owners are constantly underwhelming their dogs. Because you're nervous, you're going to do it the wrong way. So that's always been a driving force for me to share as much as possible so that I can encourage you to do it the way that I do it, because there is some nuance, but I definitely think there's so much that you all can do on your own. And board and trains are expensive. It's like, I don't know. I don't think everyone can do a board and train. So anyway, what was I saying? So, okay. So after that with Valentina, she wasn't reactive, walking around Theo. And so I'll continue to test her with that. I have her for 2 weeks. So I'm super excited. The emphasis is going to be on outings, getting her around different situations, to test her stuff. She's known to, be in a down, a dog walks past and she'll get up and lunge and bark. So working on solidifying what the down command means. And so for someone who wants to test your dog more and take them out for an outing and do what I'm doing, I recommend testing the down command in your home. So have your dog in a down on the floor. If they don't know down, I would highly recommend adding, I like to call it a jackpot session, where I just reward for the down command. I don't like rewarding for everything. Getting my dog Johnny really opened my eyes to like the power. I know that it's powerful to use food and training, but really to be very specific about how I use it, where it's not constantly having food for every single thing. But like with him, one thing I loved so much was I took my time with him for sure, which felt so different and nice from the board and train, where board and train, you need to get certain results. And there's so much that's possible over 2 weeks, but you have to be very dedicated to, okay, every single day I'm going to work on this. Where with Johnny, if I had a day where I was like, I don't really want to work on the heel command, then I wouldn't. I would take him for a walk, let him walk out in front of me or whatever. And it wasn't a big deal. But it's different with training dogs and when it's your job. But with him, what I would do that I loved was I would bring food and reward him each time he would sit next to me. And it didn't take doing it that often, but now I'll still carry some food with me when I'm with him. And every now and then I'll give him a treat and he sits every time I stop. It's the best thing ever. But with Valentina, okay, so with the down command, you can, have a little session where you only reward for the down command. I recommend using the place command, like a raised cot first when working on this. It's so helpful. I don't know why. It's probably just because it's higher off the ground. I find that most dogs who don't know the down command and you're teaching them, they have a really hard time doing it on the floor. So that's more challenging. So I'll start on the place command, the raised cot, and it's really helpful. I would recommend doing that and challenging the plate down command in your home, because it's a controlled atmosphere. You can add in your own distractions. It's just controlled, which is really nice. And that will boost your confidence on how well your dog is doing. But how that looks for me is, first, there's like rewarding for the command you want. Once you realize that a dog will do it when you have food, that's usually a cue to me, like, okay, they know what the down command is. And then if they don't do it when I don't have a piece of food, that's when I'll start to use the e-collar to correct for not laying down. And it's usually like a correction doesn't have to be a super high level. It could just mean something to the dog. It could feel more like a reminder than a correction. But I would recommend working on that in your home, because then when you go out to a new place, your dog knowing down is so helpful. So that's what I'll be working on with her. But we've been working on some other things like, her FOMO in the kennel. She's really getting into the routine, which is so great. Usually after meal times, and I feed her in her kennel, she's kind of chill, not a big deal. But there are times when, like, we came back from being in the van on an outing, and I think she was like, I want to be with you, which, I'd love for her to be on the couch with us, but it's not really helpful when working with a training dog. Just because if I had her on the couch, and the reason I'm saying this is because I know her owners baby her, and like I baby Johnny. Uh, so I'd love to have her out with me. I've had her on the chaise lounge in our backyard. That is like one of my favorite spots to teach the down command and like reinforce the down command when it's so nice outside. It's kind of like a place command, but I can also lay on it. And but I know if I babied her too much, it would just make it really challenging for her to be on her own in the kennel. And I don't want to make it too hard on her. So anyway, that's what's going on. I'm going to jump into the question I got, which I just thought was such a good question that I felt like other people would be able to relate to. Okay, water. Okay, my 1.5-year-old Aussie Doodle is similar to Jax, super whiny, anxious on walks when she sees or hears other dogs. I want to use the e-collar to address her reactivity after listening to your podcast. As I use the e-collar to hold her accountable for heel, but then at the same time as we are passing a dog, she'll start to whine, cry, howl. How am I to let her know it's the reactivity I want to address with the e-collar and not the heel that she's holding? If she leaps out of heel with the whine or bark, it makes sense for me to correct that and get her back into heel. However, in the moments when she's remaining in a heel while whining and crying, how does that situation work to correct the reactivity? Does this confuse her in the moment? Part of me feels bad to tap, especially higher in that moment if she's in a nice heel, but being very noisy. Hope this makes sense. Okay, so if I was working with a dog like this, I would probably try to let her jump out and lunge and bark to address that moment, because it's kind of like what is like the thing I'm thinking where it's like if you shake a bottle of Coke or something and you have the cap on, it will explode. So, but as soon as you undo the top, it explodes. So I'm just thinking of like a dog who is in heel and is really amped up and whiny and like there's about to pop. So you might as well let them pop and address that with the e-collar. Then it also, when you do something like that, and it would all come back to the level you use. So feel free to message me on Instagram and let me know the levels that you're currently using, what you have used. That would be really helpful. I usually only say this to owners who I've done a virtual with because I get more information and there's only so much I can do when it's just a message, but try message me with the levels and I can try to coach you as best as possible, especially the dog that you have, thinking about experience that I've had with dogs I've worked with who are like that. So, but I would let your dog react instead of holding them accountable for heel. So this is going to feel weird and kind of counterintuitive, but when you're walking, I wouldn't really care so much about heel. I would let your dog lunge and bark and correct for that. And I would probably press and hold for a second. And if you want to do like what I did with Valentina, a tap tap at a higher level, and this is higher for your dog. So it just depends on what levels you've been using. That is what I would do because it's really hard to like contain a dog who is, you haven't effectively addressed the big moment, because it's just like they're waiting to react. So when you address like the bigger moment with the more meaningful level, which I think would be really valuable for you, then it de-escalates a dog big time. It makes it so much easier to be clear with them about what you want them to do, where right now you're missing that piece of an effective setup where you are meaningfully addressing that moment with a higher level on the e-collar. So let your dog bark and lunge. That is the moment that you're going to address. Then you could tap on tone and have your dog get in heel. Then it's more manageable to correct for being pushy with heel. I hope that that makes sense because I totally know what you're talking about and it can feel very frustrating. I used to deal with this a lot before I did this setup where I would actually address the reactivity. I would try and address the things before the reactivity because you learn as you go. And that's something I heard a trainer say, like correct the intent. And so that's how I would go about it. But it would feel like the dog was just like ready to like explode. So it felt like I wasn't doing enough or I wasn't being clear enough, that kind of a thing. So that is what I would recommend. Try that on your next few walks. Think of like dogs coming by, or because this kind of helps because I know it can be very frustrating and you've been working so hard. It sounds like you're looking for progress and you're not seeing it. Think of your next few outings or walks as it's good if your dog reacts because that gives you an opportunity to add clarity to the situation. Then you can manage other things. It's easier to manage the excitement because I think that your dog will de-escalate a lot. And it's easier to get them to walk and heel and it not be like they're just like constantly like you're fighting like with what should I address or whatever. And then addressing the like the heat being pushy with heel will make more sense, I think, to you and your dog. So I hope that helps. Yeah, I think that's a great situation for addressing the actual reactive moment. It's all about levels. So if you have done that before with level 35, if you have, let me know. Like, I swear, it's like everyone's high level is 35 out of 100. Probably for a dog like yours, and I don't know, it would just depend on how, if if your dog is similar to Jack's, it would need to be a higher level. Like 80 to 90 is what I would probably do. So, but for you, you could, if you've been doing 35, start with 45 and see how your dog responds. It doesn't mean that you're doing it wrong if your dog, if you correct and your dog keeps reacting. It's feedback. It's always feedback, never a setback, because it's like this. And you're going to have your dog for a long time. Your dog is 1.5. You're going to have a lot of time to work through things. I know you probably see me with a dog for 2 weeks and get to a certain, ending, whatever, where I have like a good before and after that I can share, because I'm always hopeful. It encourages you and inspires you that there is hope for you with your reactive dogs. But for you, it could be the next month you work on this. But it all comes back to the levels you use. So I hope that what I shared about Noelle is helpful, and some other podcasts that I've recorded where I talk about levels. But for your dog, that is probably what I would recommend. So let me know if you try. Message me on Instagram. I'd be happy to talk through it with you a little bit more. I hope this is helpful. Okay, so as always, please let me know if this episode was helpful. I got some really great comments last time. You can comment on the podcast episode and I will see it and respond. That's always so helpful for me to know what resonated with you so I can share more of it. If you have questions that you'd like me to talk about on the next one, you can either message me on Instagram at Walking Dog Training or comment on this podcast. It's a really easy thing to do. If you want to, I don't know, rate the podcast, add a review, that would be great too. I'm so grateful that you're here. I'm grateful that you're taking the time to listen and to become the best version of yourself for your dog. I know this stuff can be frustrating, but there is hope, and I know you can do it. And I'm pretty sure you're doing better than you think. Okay, so go easy on yourself. As always, there's going to be some links to different resources in the show notes. So take a look at that. And if you need anything else, let me know. All right, till next time. Bye.